Your patience is rewarded.
Tonight, 2 planeswalkers have been summoned to fight to the death. Both planeswalkers walk into the arena, but only one leaves with their sparks still ignited. The planeswalkers have chosen a commander to represent them and ensure their ability to lead through the blind eternities. Who will amass the greatest army and devastate the competition? Find out on Commander Duel!
Tyler wins the role and opts to go first. He plays Terramorphic Expanse, cracking it and putting a plains into play tapped. WUBRG puts Mortuary Mire into play tapped and passes the turn. Turn 2, Tyler casts Dragon's Eye Sentry. He then plays an Azorius Chancery, returning the plains to his hand. WUBRG plays a Swamp, then taps both mana to cast a Gifted Aetherborn, passing the turn. Turn 3, Tyler plays a Forest, then casts Fortified Rampart. With no further actions, he passes the turn. WUBRG plays a Plains and casts Vampire Nighthawk. He then swings with Gifted Aetherborn. Tyler takes the damage, and WUBRG gains 2 life from the lifelink. Turn 4, Tyler plays a Plains, then casts his commander, Arcades the Strategist. He decides not to attack, and passes the turn. WUBRG plays a Plains, and casts Skullclamp. He then uses the remaining mana to cast Mavren Fiend, Dusk Apostle. WUBRG moves to combat, and swings in with Vampire Nighthawk. This triggers Mavren Fiend's ability, and creates a 1/1 vampire token with lifelink. Tyler takes the damage, and WUBRG passes the turn. Turn 5, Tyler plays an island. He then casts Wall of Shards, drawing a card from his commander's ability. He moves to combat, and swings with Arcades. WUBRG has no flying blockers, and takes 3 damage, as well as 3 commander damage. Tyler then passes the turn. WUBRG plays a Plains. He equips Skullclamp to the Vampire token, killing it and allowing him to draw 2 cards. He then casts Sorin, Lord of Innistrad. WUBRG uses the -2 ability, creating an emblem. Creatures you control get +1/+0. He moves to combat, and swings with Vampire Nighthawk for 3 damage, and creating another 1/1 vampire token with lifelink. Turn 6, Wall of Shards cumulative upkeep triggers, and WUBRG gains a life. Tyler plays a Reliquary Tower as his land for turn. He moves to combat, and casts Solidarity, providing +0/+5 to all his creatures. But with Arcades in play, this translates to power as well, as creatures assign damage equal to their toughness rather than their power. He swings all his creatures at WUBRG's life points. WUBRG blocks the Fortified Rampart with Gifted Aetherborn. He gains 3 life from the lifelink, but then takes 24 damage. Feeling confident, Tyler then passes the turn. WUBRG plays a Plains. He adds a loyalty to Sorin, Lord of Innistrad, creating a 1/1 black vampire token with lifelink. With the 1 black mana floating, he casts Knight of the Ebon Legion. He taps his remaining mana to cast Exquisite Blood, hoping to gain some life back. WUBRG moves to combat and swings with Vampire Nighthawk, creating another 1/1 vampire token with lifelink. Tyler has no blocks, taking 3 damage. WUBRG gains 3 life from the lifelink, and an additional 3 from an Exquisite Blood trigger. Turn 7, Wall of Shards triggers, and WUBRG gains 2 life. Tyler plays a Seaside Citadel, which enters the battlefield tapped. He taps 3 mana to cast Return to the Ranks for X=1, choosing to return Fortified Rampart to the battlefield. Tyler draws a card from the ability on Arcades. He then spends another 2 mana to cast Tetsuko Umezawa Fugitive, allowing for most of his creatures to become unblockable. Could this be the end for the Vampiric Legion? Tyler swings with all of his creatures. WUBRG has no choice but to take the damage. After that, the turn is passed. WUBRG untaps, and luckily has drawn an answer. He taps out to cast Sorin Vampire Lord. He uses the -2 ability, dealing 4 damage to Tetsugo Umezawa Fugitive, killing it. He adds a loyalty to Sorin Lord of Innistrad to create another 1/1 black vampire token with lifelink. WUBRG moves to combat, swinging in with 3 tokens and Vampire Nighthawk. Mavren Fiend's ability triggers again, creating a 1/1 vampire token with lifelink. Tyler assigns blocks to 2 of the tokens, killing them. He takes 5 damage, and WUBRG gains 14 life. Knight of the Ebon Legion gains a +1/+1 counter, as Tyler has lost more than 4 life this turn. Turn 8, Wall of Shards triggers, and WUBRG gains 3 life. Tyler plays a Plains, and proceeds to tap out to cast Colossus of Akros. He draws a card for the ability on Arcades. Tyler swings down with all available creatures. WUBRG blocks with 2 tokens. He gains 4 life due to the Sorin emblem, but takes 6 damage, 3 of it commander. With no remaining mana, Tyler passes the turn. WUBRG equips Skull Clamp to the Vampire token, killing it and allowing him to draw 2 cards. He plays a Swamp and taps out to cast the 3rd Sorin of the game, Sorin Grim Nemesis. He chooses the -5 ability targeting Arcades. Tyler has no response and puts Arcades in the command zone. WUBRG uses the -2 ability on Sorin Lord of Innistrad, gaining another emblem. Finally, he adds a loyalty on Sorin Vampire Lord, giving an additional +2/+0 to Vampire Nighthawk until the end of the turn. Moving to combat, he swings with Mavren, Knight of the Ebon Legion, and Vampire Nighthawk at Tyler. He creates a 1/1 vampire token with lifelink thanks to Mavren's ability. Tyler declares a block on Knight of the Ebon Legion. He takes 10 damage total. WUBRG gains 6 life from Vampire Nighthawk and 10 from Exquisite Blood. It looks like the tides have turned. Tyler's only hope may be to kill WUBRG with commander damage. WUBRG passes the turn. Holding out hope that the damage from Wall of Shards will be enough to kill WUBRG, he pays the cumulative upkeep, allowing WUBRG to gain 4 life. Tyler plays a Forest and spends 6 mana to recast Arcades. He spends an additional 2 mana to cast Gleaming Barrier, drawing a card from the ability on Arcades. Tyler attacks with all creatures able to do so. Since Colossus of Akros is not monstrous, it does not have trample. WUBRG declares a block with a token. WUBRG takes 17 damage, but gains 3 life from the blocking lifelink token. Tyler declares the damage is not enough and admits he's in big doo-doo, passing the turn. WUBRG plays a Plains. He adds a loyalty to Sorin Lord of Innistrad, creating a 1/1 vampire token with lifelink. He adds a loyalty to Sorin Grim Nemesis, but unfortunately reveals a land from the top of his library. He taps for 5 mana, casting Champion of Dusk, losing 4 life, but drawing 4 cards. He adds loyalty to Sorin Vampire Lord, giving Vampire Nighthawk an additional +2/+0 until the end of turn. WUBRG moves to combat. He swings with Vampire Nighthawk, creating another 1/1 vampire token with Mavren's ability. Tyler declares no blocks, taking an additional 6 damage. WUBRG gains 12 life. Second main phase, WUBRG equips Skull Clamp to a token, killing it and allowing him to draw 2 cards. WUBRG moves to discard and puts 2 lands into the graveyard. Turn 10, Wall of Shards triggers and WUBRG gains 5 life. Tyler casts Basilica Guards, drawing a card from the abilities on Arcades, hoping to find an answer. He then casts Jeskai Barricade on his own turn, hoping to find an immediate answer. He draws a card and returns Wall of Shards to his hand. Tyler recasts Wall of Shards, paying for the Extort, and draws an additional card. But is it something that can turn this game around? Tyler plays a Tranquil Cove as his land for turn and gains a life. He moves to combat and swings with 5 creatures. WUBRG declares no blocks and takes 26 damage. 3 of the damage is commander. In a single swing, Tyler is able to nearly balance the life totals. WUBRG starts his main phase adding a loyalty to Sorin Lord of Innistrad and creating a 1/1 lifelink vampire token. He adds a loyalty to Sorin Grim Nemesis, but for the second time in a row hits a land off the top of his library. He adds a loyalty to Sorin Vampire Lord, giving Vampire Nighthawk +2/+0 until the end of turn. WUBRG swings in combat with the Vampire Nighthawk, creating another 1/1 vampire creature token. Tyler blocks with Wall of Shards. The creatures trade and both go to the graveyard. WUBRG gains 6 life. Second main phase, WUBRG casts Voldaren Pariah. He sacrifices 3 tokens to transform Voldaren Pariah into Abolisher of Bloodlines, causing Tyler to sacrifice 3 creatures. Tyler sacrifices Jeskai Barricade, Fortified Rampart, and Gleaming Barrier, making a treasure token when Gleaming Barrier dies. WUBRG then casts Drana's Emissary, passing the turn shortly after. Turn 11, Tyler plays a Temple of Mystery, scrying to the bottom. He then pays the Monstrous ability on Colossus of Akros, adding 10 +1/+1 counters and giving the creature trample. Tyler moves to combat and swings with all of his creatures. WUBRG declares his blocks and takes 18 trample damage in the combat. After the damage, Tyler loses Arcades to the Abolisher of Bloodlines block. He also loses Dragon's Eye Sentry to a Champion of Dusk block. WUBRG loses Drana's Emissary from the Basilica Guards block, and Mavrin Fine was thrown under the bus to stop some of the trample damage from Colossus of Akros. Arcades is put back into the command zone. On WUBRG's upkeep, realizing he is tapped out and adding the creature damage plus the planeswalker abilities, Tyler concedes and the game is concluded.